not lucky, I'm blessed. Yes, clap for the heavyweight champ, me. But I couldn't do it all alone, we.
Sara vive en Estados Unidos.
I need you guys to see this view.
Hello, pretty boy. Girl. There you go! Yeah, you took it.
Welcome back, everybody, and if you're new here, hello and welcome. This is a topic that has been really foundational within my own emotional growth and within the growth, I guess, in general of who I am and how I perceive the world and how I perceive myself and where I fit in it. I'm honestly really excited to talk about it today. These are things that have been working for me and continue to work for me. And so I want to talk about both some practices that I do as well as just some foundational things that I really feel helped me be in a position to even expand further within myself, to feel like I am someone that is in control when it comes to my emotions, when it comes to my reactions in certain situations, and just overall how I present myself and I choose to walk through the world. So I use the term self-regulation in a slightly broader sense. I would say in general, self-regulation is one's ability to not only understand, but our ability to manage certain behaviors in reaction to feelings and circumstances and events. And honestly, understanding ourselves enough to track what's really happening within our emotional landscape. And also, I think in a really significant sense, our ability to slow down in these moments and actually allowing ourselves to process real time what is happening in a certain situation or within a certain emotion or strong feeling. And so self-regulation, I think, is something that at some point in our lives we've had to work at. I feel like as I've gotten older and as life gets more complicated, it can be hard to know how to adapt this skill into your life and allow it to transform as you grow and as you step into who you are and your individuality. And so these are a couple things that I currently do that have not only helped me maintain a sense of self in emotionally draining situations, but I would also consider them daily practices that kind of help me keep my life on track and keep myself on track. And I definitely know that I derive a sense of security within these things as well. And a really large part of understanding who I am today and learning how to manage myself has come from truly just studying myself. I have spent a lot of time getting to know myself at different stages in my life. I've spent a lot of time talking to myself. I have grown to be someone that I feel like I can confide in. I've grown to be someone whose voice I trust. I feel very comfortable turning within to solve problems, to respond to certain situations, and I myself represent a voice that I find to be really soothing and really grounding and something that I can rely on. And I feel like that's a really important aspect of self-regulation, and it's truly just feeling like you are someone that you can trust. And I think without that, it could be really hard to feel as though you are in control of your emotions and control of your reactions when you don't even view yourself as someone you can rely on. And so I believe that's a really foundational part of self-regulation, and without that, I think there will always be a sense of insecurity and a sense of imminent attack when you yourself don't even view yourself as that lighthouse. And I really feel like that takes time to develop, you know? I don't think anyone just walks through life and completely trusts themselves in every situation. And there are circumstances where a lot of the variables that are at play are foreign and unknown. So we're left feeling exposed and pushed into a reactive state. And I believe that's where having self-regulation practices instilled and having that understanding of self is what can really help feel more security in those situations. And I feel like it also allows us to look back on certain situations and emotions and feelings with a greater sense of understanding. I think in a lot of ways it takes away the mystery and allows you to be more introspective moving forward as well. I'm a really big thinker, okay? It is a blessing and it is a curse. And a lot of times when I'm feeling anxious and overwhelmed, it is most definitely a curse. I will pick fights in my head. I will create scenarios that quite literally have not happened and don't exist and run with them in my head and allow my body to be fully immersed in this false reality that most of the time causes harm. And I feel like in part I do this because I think it's helping me prepare for when those situations happen. I feel like my mind thinks that if I go through this scenario and all the possible things that could happen, I'll have that response and I'll be able to react a certain way or say the things that I want to say. And I feel like it's a really unhealthy form of self-preparation. And so in a lot of ways, I've had to learn how to slow down my mind and to really learn how to sit within reality and ground myself and not allow myself to drift off into some other world that is ultimately causing a lot of damage. So one practice that I love to do, because you could do it ultimately anywhere, is a mindfulness practice that I've picked up along the way. I honestly don't know where I picked it up, but it's been something that I've done for a while now. One thing that always brings my mind to ease is imagining that my mind is one big open room and my thoughts and emotions that might presently exist in my mind and in this room are things that are free to come and go as they please. Typically, living rooms are considered sort of like the heart of a home and also a major connecting point for different spaces within that environment. And so viewing my mind as a living room allows me to allow these emotions or these thoughts or these negative feelings to pass by and continue on. And the thing about living rooms as well is that even though you may spend a lot of time in living rooms, typically people go off to their room. Typically at some point you have to leave and go to the kitchen, and you don't exist fully within the living room, and there's always a place for you to go. I view my arguments, I view my emotions and my reactions as objects that are free to come into the living room and go as they please, and none of them have to stay there. So for example, let's say I had an argument or a disagreement with someone and it's really weighing on me, and I find myself trapped in a cycle of rethinking the whole situation, reliving the conversation, and quite literally rewriting history, saying all the things that I wish I would have said in that moment but didn't. And sometimes depending on how big these emotions are, it takes me a little longer to recognize what I'm doing in my head, because like I said, I get carried away and I can get lost in my mind. So at the point that I realize, Sydney, you were literally not helping yourself by reliving this moment, that's when I take a moment and breathe and literally just say either out loud or in my mind, like, my mind is a living room and these emotions are free to come and go as they please. And sometimes I do just want to sit in my feelings, and that's okay. And in that sense, I might say, okay, these emotions are here right now, like they're chilling, they're in the living room, but that doesn't mean they have to stay there. At some point they are free to leave, and I quite literally just visualize these emotions coming and going and moving, and it's a really alleviating feeling for me, honestly. I feel like this visualization practice has allowed me to view my emotions as free-flowing things, as something that can exist and take up space in my mind but don't necessarily have to be stuck there. So it allows me to take a step back and objectively view my emotions and the things that are going on in my mind and say, okay, I see you, I validate your existence, but also you don't have to be here all the time and you can leave. And I feel like until you actually do this exercise, it might be a little conceptual, but I really encourage you to try it out, because I cannot explain how much of a difference I feel before actively doing this practice and after. My mind just feels a lot clearer. I feel like I'm no longer crowded in my mind, and it really just feels like I've opened up and there is an infinite amount of space, and it really just like pulls me out of that position of feeling stuck. And I would say that's honestly one of my most important tools in my self-regulation toolbox. And it's something that can be used and applied to many different situations. Another thing that I've come into the practice of doing that I found to be particularly grounding in spaces that are overstimulating and overwhelming to me is monitoring my body sensations. And it's also something that allows me to feel intentionally present as well. So let's say I'm having a conversation with someone and the topic is threatening to me. You know, I feel like I'm going on the defense. I know for me, particularly when I feel anxious, my heart beats, I get clammy, I get cold sweats, and my stomach hurts. And I feel like it's really important to have the ability to read those reactions and to have a system that makes sense of the literal signals that our body is giving us that we are uncomfortable. One thing that I have observed within myself is when I'm having conversations that feel particularly threatening, my neck gets stiff. You know, if I'm in a space that I'm uncomfortable, I can literally go like this and my neck will pop. Like, I hold a lot of tension and anxiety right here in my neck, and being able to read that reaction and notice it allows me to get in the mindset of, okay, we feel discomfort right now, we're not at ease. What is it that I can do now to best support myself and bring back some of that security and comfort that I know exists but has temporarily gone away? And carrying that self-awareness with me allows me to initiate this sort of like mental talk. I have created a voice that I trust within me. You know, I am someone that I trust listening to, and so when I feel those sensations, that's sort of my cue to talk to myself and say, okay, Sydney, like, this is stressing us out, like, we feel uncomfortable. What can we do to get ourselves out of this position? And essentially just talk myself down. You know, I'm not gonna say it's always successful because some situations are a lot more stressful than others, but for me, it's been a great way to help me self-regulate. And it's that mental kind of like talk down and that recognition that my body is sending me signals that something is off. So learning different sensations and reactions that my body naturally has to these environments and these spaces has been a really big way for me to not only stay present in these situations, but actively work to talk myself down from any strong or big emotions and reactive behavior that I may just want to run with because it seems like the quickest and the easiest option. And I think regardless of how expected or unexpected a particular event or big emotion feels, I think one thing that always soothes me as well is the understanding that it'll pass. Rarely do we stay in one emotion forever. Rarely do we stay in one situation forever. And so yeah, I feel like self-regulation is a holistic thing. It's not just about the mental gymnastics. It's about reading ourselves and feeling our sensations and being present in our body and using all the indications that we have at our disposal to allow ourselves to be as intentional in these moments as we can. And something that I feel like is just an underlying element within self-regulation is awareness, and the awareness of choice that may not always feel like it's actually there in certain situations, but I feel like that awareness is a really important aspect of allowing ourselves time to actually slow down and see that we probably do have options. And I'm definitely not saying this from the position that I am a perfect human being and I always see my options and I choose the best one. That is not what I'm saying, and I think in a lot of cases I don't choose the best option. But I'm aware of that and I acknowledge that, and I feel like as we continue to grow, that's something that's really important. And so in most situations, we have, in general, like 3 options. It's the option to avoid, it's the option to attack, and the option to approach. And so I think honestly, depending on the situation, I don't think there's one option that's the best, truthfully. I think it will always come down to that particular situation and what option is the best for you, you know, because I do believe there are times to attack and to defend yourself. I don't think the option to attack is inherently negative. I think there's times where the best option is to avoid the situation and address it later, or wait till the right moment when the playing field is a lot more level and then approach. And I think there are times when we are well within our means to have a head-on approach and address the situation. It's important to acknowledge that there are options in most, if not every situation. So that in essence is how I have built a foundation within my ability to self-regulate. Like I said, I'm not a perfect person, and it's taken a long time for me to even develop these skills, and even longer to actually put them in practice and actually have the ability to use them in times where they are needed. I would say for me, those are the 4 pillars for my ability to self-regulate. That would be becoming a voice that I trust, mindfulness practices, having the ability to monitor my body sensations, and also having the awareness of choice. And outside of that, I also have created a lot of practical ways that allow me to not only maintain, but create stability both mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I've already shown you a couple snippets of ways that I create that stability, but it looks like exercise, it looks like intentional movement. When necessary, I have physical distractions, I have affirmations, and I also have safe spaces such as nature that allow me to reset and to be still and ground myself. Energy is stored and held in our bodies in a lot of different ways and a lot of different places. So a lot of these practices have to do with movement, and movement that allows me to exert a lot of energy. Something else that I've been doing honestly since the beginning of the year is I re-downloaded Duolingo, which honestly I don't know how much closer I am to being able to fluently speak Spanish based off of Duolingo, but it's been a really good mental distraction for me. And I feel like it's a little more intentional than scrolling on social media. As much as I don't feel like I could speak Spanish, at least I feel like I'm engaged in a way that is feeding into some form of growth, I guess. And so I've been using Duolingo as a physical distraction. And on top of that, I have my songs that I know I could just scream from the top of my lungs whether or not they sound good. And that also kind of releases that pent up energy I feel inside. Or if I'm frustrated or angry, I just channel all that energy into some Paramore song and just kind of let it all out. And so that's been a really healing practice for me as well. And so for me, it's just all been about finding practical ways to manage and respond to my emotions that are less harmful for the people around me and for myself. And I really feel like, in a nutshell, that is the goal of self-regulation. I feel like since actively partaking in these practices, I felt a lot more stable, I felt a lot more secure, and I think it's really contributed to my own emotional development and growth as well. Something else that I've been doing too that's been actually really helpful is also using my voice memos on my phone. I just like recording my thoughts and record myself talking through my emotions. Sometimes I just want to voice how I feel and lay it all out. And so utilizing my memos has really helped me do that. And also I feel like the plus side of that is I can store them and I can track them. And so sometimes I like to go back and listen to the voice memos that I've made and experience where I was at a given point in time, or almost compare and see okay, this is what I thought back then. Do I still feel that way? Interesting. I remember going through these emotions and I don't exist in that anymore, So I feel like that's also been really helpful for me as well, as far as understanding my progress and understanding where I used to be. I don't think the point is to be perfect or to work yourself into a position where you always have the best response and the best reactions, although I think it's great to always do your best. I think there's always something to be learned and there's always new experience to be had out there. And so for me, it's just about the security of having this toolbox and understanding that I am doing what I can to create the best situations, and also recognizing that in every situation, we typically tend to do the best we can do with what we believed was at our disposal. And that's not to say regardless of how we react and what we do, it was always the best option. But I do believe that we do tend to react based off what we, at that moment, thought would be the best way to react and respond. I think it is a skill that does need to be developed, and it's a skill that constantly needs to be reworked, but I think the whole point is that we are moving intentionally and finding ways to exist intentionally. And so these are some of the ways that I do that. So yeah, I just thought I would share that with y'all. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for the support, and let me know the ways that you self-regulate. Like, is there anything that you do particularly that's brought a lot of comfort within yourself? It could be really hard to trust ourselves when there's so many examples of when we couldn't, or so many examples of when we did trust ourselves and it ended up turning out badly, you know. But I think it's always good to acknowledge where you're at and where you potentially want to be, and just kind of keep working towards it. But again, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day or month or week or year, and until next time, happy healing. All right, bye.